All right, so my co-presenter, Colleen, was nice enough to say that that is not the Clooney that is representing right here. 30 years in auditing will turn you into this as opposed to that. But still, I had done a talk with the TCTA about getting ready for the audit, and then Mike had asked us to come here today to talk about proactive audit. We kind of combine the two of them together to try and give you guys an idea of how to kind of get prepared for the audit. And where do you start when it comes to that? You start at the end, right? Start here. So we're going to start at the end, the exit conference from the year before, right? Everybody loves the exit conference, okay? Because number one, that means the audit's over. That's always a very happy time for everybody, right? Thank you, Joe and John, for these comments in the front. You want to turn those around to everybody? Thank you. A lot of friendly faces out there today as well. A little heckling going on. So the exit conference, happy time because the audit's over, and that's great news, right? But really, it's the beginning of the next audit cycle. You got comments and recommendations that are included in the audit report that have to be discussed. Hopefully you don't have any comments and recommendations. Show of hands, nobody has any comments and recommendations, right? None, right? I mean, I can only imagine. But you'll have the comments and recommendations that are actually to go into the report. Then you're also going to include things that maybe are on the verge of going into your audit report, all right? And then hopefully you'll have some value-added things that maybe the auditors have discovered during the course of the audit process to kind of give to you to work forward, okay? Whether it's talking about cybersecurity or perhaps like the electronic payment of bills, which is another thing that's going to be coming up for everybody, and to start to build towards things like that. But it's really crucial when you're at the exit conference to take notes, to really kind of get involved with that, because that's where you're going to start the next day, right? As soon as the audit's over, the thing you want to do is get involved in the next audit, right? You got nothing better to do with your time. Let's jump right back in. But it's true. Obviously, if you have comments and recommendations, you have to prepare a corrective action plan. That's kind of like pretty straightforward. I'm focusing a little bit more on the things that are not in the audit yet, okay? Most auditors, I don't know, do we have any other auditors in the audience? Show of hands. I guess I'm alone. That's fine.
How about former auditors?
Colleen was an auditor once, but former auditors in the audience, I know we have at least a few. Okay, but those other, Tom, you're late. Okay, sit down.
Way to be on time.
Way to be on time. Check his credits on the way out, please. But there's the things in there that are on the verge of going into the audit report. Perhaps you have a problem with confirming orders. Perhaps you have a problem with 48 hours, and it hasn't risen to the level yet of getting into the audit. Okay? Now's the time at the exit conference or after the exit conference, you need to go out and address these things with your department heads and with whoever is involved in that situation. Because as an auditor, when we look at this, okay, you have comments, we're going to deal with those. You're going to be forced to deal with those, right? It's the things that remain on the exit conference sheet year on year, and the next year you're going to find it, and you're just going to be in the audit because you just didn't take care of it. So very, very important at that time to take notes. A lot of times there's an exit conference sheet, and the auditors, we like to get you to sign that so we can say, hey, we told that to you last year. You could ask for a copy of it. Sometimes auditors are a little bit reluctant to hand that out, okay? But it's a very good idea to either get a copy of that or take notes. It's one of my favorite things to come back the next year and say, well, you didn't tell me about that. And I have the sheet that's signed, of course. But you guys should be taking notes on that to get ready for the next year. Very important. And the value-added things, like I said, two of the things that we've been talking about a lot, at least in our firm, is cybersecurity and also electronic payment of bills, which is out there. It's one of the things I always harp on. My clients are out there know that I'm talking about it all the time because everybody here is breaking the rules, okay? You're all breaking the rules and have comments and recommendations and probably fired, right? Because you're all paying bills electronically anyhow. You're paying the pension, you're paying health benefits, you're paying your debt service. Check your administrative code. There's no rules in there. It talks about warrants and signed by the mayor and signed by this. It's not in there. You should all be, I'm doing the exit conference right now, Colleen, that's what's happening. You really should be looking at that. We're trying to make that a proactive thing, okay, that you're going to get on top of it, because 5 years from now, I'm telling you, we're going to be paying our bills electronically, and you're going to find the state is eventually going to maybe force us to do that. So I'm encouraging everybody to at least kind of put their toe in the water on that and start thinking about the things that are being involved with, that are going to be involved with that. But again, that happens after the exit conference is done. You start thinking about those things at that point.
One of the things I wanted to talk about with the exit conference is that exit conferences are done generally very differently throughout each town. You might have an exit conference where you do it over the phone. You might have a meeting. It might be you and the audit team. One of the things I like to do is I like to have all the main players in the room to hear things. If you don't have comments and recommendations, like John said, there might be other things on this exit conference sheet that need to be addressed. So if you can have people in your room, like your administrator, possibly your mayor, who can hear these things, and you can discuss while you have the auditor in the room with everybody there why it's a problem. Because often when you come out of the finance office and other people hear things that are on the exit conference sheet, they don't quite understand what the impact is, why these things are important. So I like to have them there so we can have that full discussion, why this is important, what we need to change, and what my plan is. Because if I can have the mayor and the administrator already behind me saying, yes, absolutely, go ahead with that, it's much easier to get departments to do what you need them to do by having that support. If you don't have that support from the beginning, sometimes things get lost in the shuffle. They get lost in the shuffle anyway, but it's good to have the entire management team there to understand and to agree on what you're going to do about these things going forward. And there's also the part of the exit conference and any notes and comments that come where the auditors might identify things and say, you know, this could be a problem, this is a problem, but you may have to counteract that, and you may say, you know, while you think that's a problem, here's why we do it that way, and here's the reason that we can't do it a different way. It may be that you have a smaller staff and you have to do things that you can with the resources that are available to you, or you might have other things in place that maybe they weren't aware of. And sometimes that's how it comes out. And so it's that open communication. It's that time when you can all sit down together in a room and look at all of it together. Sometimes you talk during the audit, but this is when you kind of bring it all together, that summary piece, to have your plan going forward after your exit conference.
Yeah, you're right. And the other thing that I didn't mention is really, you should have a member of the governing body there at the exit conference. Most folks don't want to. You're going to have a pre-exit conference. Any governing body members with us today? Good news. Okay, great. I can talk freely then. But honestly, we're supposed to be reporting to governance, and we do that by virtue of the audit report. That's our report. But it's good to have somebody in the room for that, and there can be a pre-exit conference as well, okay? But having somebody there, sometimes it lends gravity to it, particularly if you have all the players at the table. And, you know, I've gone through it even with Colleen and some of our exit conferences, et cetera, where it's nice to have the mayor there, the head of the finance committee there, so the seriousness of the situation, particularly with things that are not in the audit report. Let's take care of this and get it done so it doesn't become an issue, it doesn't become a matter in the audit report. So that's very important. So it's at the beginning. All right, the in-between. Is that an Oreo? Mm-hmm. Okay, there you go. Some of this is a surprise to me as well. Okay, so again, you're going to craft your corrective action plan with the input and commitment of key personnel, and then implement, and that's in capital letters because it's emphasized, implement your corrective action plan. I had a client, which will go nameless, and literally I did their audit for 25 years. They were written up for not having a general ledger every year. And they said in their corrective action plan, we're going to utilize technology to implement the general ledger. And it just never happened. It was just words that were on a piece of paper. It never happened. I think this year, actually the CFO is gone now, and they might actually have a general ledger this year. But she would just write it down, and the governing body really should be questioning. Anybody from DLGS here, are they looking at the comments and recommendations? The FAST system now apparently is going to have all the comments and recommendations on it, so that's going to be taken care of. We have nothing to worry about there, I'm sure. But it is, I mean, writing that, the corrective action plan, you can also bring the auditors into that. We can give value-added services there as well in helping you to write it out. How can we fix this? We're really good at identifying problems, right? Auditors are real good at that. But then helping you through how can you actually correct it. Very, very important, but implementation and then monitoring that to make sure that it is implemented. You don't want that repeat recommendation, right? Communication with professionals, auditors, bond counsels, financial advisors are a good sounding resource to the management team. Remember that there are outside experts for such things as IRS regulations, deferred comp, insurance. And then this is, you know, Colleen adding this in here. Keep in mind the professionals should be not making the management decisions, but should be consultants when questions arise. And particularly for your auditors, okay? We're independent. We cannot make management decisions. But you can ask me questions, and we kind of work our way around it. I'll let you know how I feel. But, you know, you guys are making the decisions. When you talk about your financial advisors, they're advocates for you. okay? And really important to include them in on the process depending upon what the comment and recommendation might mean. But very good to have them involved in that process as well, so you're putting together a good corrective action plan.
One of the things that I do all the time is I consult my professionals, whether it be the auditor, bond counsel, financial advisors, as John mentioned, because as things come up during the year, there are often things that are new, whether it's new because of legislation or it's new because you've never experienced it before, or there are also things when you've done this as long as I have that you did a long time ago, but you don't quite remember. And I like to just say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. I don't necessarily call them and say, how do I do this? But I say, you know, here's the situation and here's what I'm thinking. Is that correct? Do you think that's a good way to go about it? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes we come up with a different plan. But it's always good for me, the way I like to operate is I'd rather do it correct the first time. Because the worst is when your auditor comes in and now they've discovered something that you did wrong, and there's no way to correct it because the year is closed and now it's a really big problem. Where if you just make those few steps, if you have that comfortable relationship, which you should. I'm not saying that you have to call, you know, once a week and check in, but as things arise, bring them in. If there's something that's capital in nature, you know, that you're maybe going to fund differently, you should still have your bond counsel involved because likely they need to be involved. And there's nothing wrong with going to them. That's what they're there for. That's what our professionals are there to do. They're there to assist us with these decisions so that we can make the proper recommendations to our governing body and that everything runs smoothly. There's no surprises. There's no headlines. There's no orange jumpsuits. Everything's good.
You look great in orange anyhow. It'll be fantastic, I'm sure. And I'll stress that again. You know, we've always professionals, we've got things to do with our lives, but I'd rather have the phone call. Colleen makes a great point. I can't help you after it's happened and I'm there for the audit. 98% of the things that you do are, you know, day-to-day operations. It's that 2% that'll kill you. Pick up the phone and make a phone call to me and ask me the question. I can't tell you what to do because I can't do management services, but just talking through it is a good idea. Be careful sometimes not to put it in an email. Okay? Because when you put it in an email and then I have to answer, I'm going to give you the right answer. When we're talking on the phone, we can talk about different options and things like that. I wouldn't necessarily put that in an email sometimes, right? So better sometimes to make that phone call when you think that you're bothering us, you're not bothering us. It's a pain.
Sometimes I'm bothering them.
Yeah, every once in a while. It's not easy for us to write comments and recommendations. We don't like doing it. It actually takes time, okay? And sometimes it's hard to do. I prefer not to write comments and recommendations, and sometimes a simple phone call would get you out of that situation, and that's being proactive. It's reaching out. Be a little bit of a pain in the neck to us, and that would be, that's the one I'm talking out there, right? Okay? Reach out for us and let us know, because we will be there to help you out. All right. Keep calm and love internal controls. Who doesn't love internal controls out there? Yeah. Ice cream is ahead, and we're talking about internal controls. Fantastic. Okay. Ongoing and monitoring of internal controls. Internal controls are a paramount tool in safeguarding assets. Paramount, I like that. That's very nice. It's true. Having proper internal controls will assist in preventing and detecting any fraudulent activities in a timely manner, okay? Review your internal controls regularly for weaknesses and external threats and changes. And we cannot wait until there's a problem to determine if controls are outdated or have become ineffective. Consult with other department personnel on their processes and consider implementing a process for internal auditing. We'll get back to that in a second. But I'm very quick to say internal controls, which is just my favorite thing to talk about in the world. Internal controls are not just a written thing, you put it in your desk and it's gone. Okay? It's something that you really always have to be monitoring. Everybody's like, John, I got enough things to do with my life. I'm going to sit there thinking about internal controls. Now people are going to perpetuate fraud, or we're going to have faulty financial reporting. But you really kind of have to do it. I mean, particularly with all the things that are happening with technology these days, et cetera, you've got to be thinking about it. I mean, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands on this, but the number of reports I have of, like, you know, just even cyber fraud again, people just sending stuff out because they got a call to change the wiring directions on a bond anticipation note, and all of a sudden it's just gone. Okay, what should we be talking about? Should we be putting some controls in somehow to have dual approval of wire transfers, correct? Everybody should have dual approval of wire transfers, yes? Okay, that's very important. The answer is yes. You guys all get credit for that. But not just that, because we're going to get a little bit more into fraud in a little bit, but you need to be constantly thinking about the fact that fraud could be occurring, okay? Our firm does 62 municipalities, 35 Board of Educations. I guarantee you, right now in one of our boards, somebody's either taking money or they're thinking about taking money. I just don't know about it yet, and I may never find out about it. You guys are down on the ground, right? And you've got to be thinking about, like, well, how would I do it? Okay, how are my controls going to prevent this from happening? Instead of like being reactionary, it happens and like, well, holy cow, we probably should have had somebody looking at that. So just kind of remember, number one, the internal controls are supposed to be written. Some of our internal controls are written. Most of us probably maybe have a purchasing manual. Okay, do you have written controls over taking in tax collectors' receipts? Written controls, right? Payroll, how the payroll is processed. We have written controls on that. The Board of Educations actually have boilerplate stuff, standard operating procedures that are actually not good. They're just basically boilerplate from district to district to district. But it is an endeavor to sit down and actually write them down, okay? The bad news about writing them down is then you have to stick to them, which makes it a little bit difficult sometimes too. But, Kelly, you want to just touch on a couple things?
One of the things about internal controls, you know, we could talk about it forever, but we all understand what they are and why they're important. But if you've ever had to go through an investigation where, you know, something did happen, there was fraud committed in any of your towns, it's not fun. And being able to at least answer, whether it's a prosecutor or someone from the state or someone from the FBI, whatever the case might be, and be able to show that, yes, we have written controls and I've reviewed them and here's what they were supposed to be. And yes, obviously there was a failure, but there wasn't a failure on my part. I've done all that I can. That helps not only to be able to provide the answers that you want to be able to provide, but I know for me, that helps give me comfort because it's not a good process and it's awful to be sitting there when you're asked something that at the time seems like such a simple question and you have to say, no, I didn't think about that. You just don't want to be in that position. So it's just one of those things. It's not as if you have to sit down and take 20 minutes a day and sit at your desk and you know, concentrate on internal controls. It's just as things are going, everyday operations, you know, you just put a little thought into it. You know, I do it this way, but is there a better way? Is there a more efficient way? Is there a safer way? I have, you know, this person handling that and that. Maybe they shouldn't be. Maybe I need to switch up some duties. You know, maybe I need to know how things are handled in an outside department. I need to make sure that things are locked, that cash is safe, that people don't have made-up change funds. I mean, that's one of the things I've come across too, you know, that you start asking questions, you find out that a department has a change fund that you had no idea about. How they got that money, how it became, I don't know. But, you know, those are all things that you just need to think of as you're doing your other things. What is this? Why is this? Are there things we're still doing that maybe you don't even need to anymore? Maybe there's things you can eliminate and therefore streamline the process and concentrate more on what's a better internal control instead of what's an existing internal control.
Yeah, and like I said, and we'll get to the last bullet point here, and that's the design of your internal controls to detect or prevent fraud or bad financial reporting within a reasonable period of time. So you design these things with that in matter, correct? But then you have to monitor them as well, okay? Because you can have the best plan out there, but if people are not doing it, then, well, it's not getting done. And the last point that Colleen put on our slide here, consider implementing a process for internal auditing. And I know people are going to shake their heads. You got enough on your plate, particularly in the smaller municipalities. This would be a very difficult thing to do, to monitor the internal controls on an ongoing basis, as opposed to me coming in and doing a sample at the end of the year to see whether or not your purchasing controls, your payroll controls, your receipt controls are actually functioning. Because that's what we're doing in our audit report. We do have our financial statement opinion, we have our opinion on compliance, we have our opinion on internal controls. Are the controls designed properly, and are they actually working? So one of the things that Colleen is actually trying to bring to Middletown, which is a larger community, is doing a little bit of checking during the course of the year. Do you want to touch on that real quick?
Sure. I haven't actually brought the internal control piece to life yet there, but I've discussed it at department head meetings. I've told them they're aware of what the processes are, especially for handling cash. And I've told them, you know, what we expect to see. And I've told them that I hope to get a process in place where we're coming out. I have a very good central accounting staff. And if you have just say you know, in a town like Middletown, there's probably about 8 external revenue collection departments, and some of them aren't located on the same property as us, some of them aren't in the same building as us. So to send someone out once a year even is not that big of a time constraint. It's more getting the program set up that's a little time consuming. But you go out there, and like I said, and you make sure that one person is using a cash drawer, that it's being locked up, that it's being properly recorded, that, you know, they're not making change out of the cash box, they're not cashing their own checks out of the cash box. And it's not so much that we're looking to go out there and say, oh, I found this, I got you. One of my things that I always say is that at least if people know you're looking, that someone's going to come and take a look at this at some point, they tend to do things with a little more thought. They don't get as lax. They think, if they were to show up here today, would this be okay? And hopefully that will prevent, and it's not only fraud, but it's mistakes. You know, it's just, you know, you make change and you don't make the right change. Well, don't do that. You know, there are things, you know, you have 2 and 3 people in a cash box and suddenly cash is missing, then everybody looks guilty. So it's more to keep those internal controls steady and to let people know that we don't just put it out there to say this is what you need to do. We actually expect you to do what we're putting out there.
Yeah, that is really key, the monitoring of it. And as we move along, okay, our general ledger shows multiple occurrences of $49.50. Any idea what this might be? Okay, so here we're going to kind of get into something that we do at the beginning of each engagement. Okay, we do analytics, ARPS. It's a fancy word for analytics. It makes it seem like we know what we're doing, right? And what is that? That's us basically just taking certain financial information and comparing it from year to year, whether that's the balance sheet, whether that's revenues, whether that's expenditures. I'm sure that your auditors have come to you and say, hey, by the way, why did salaries and wages in the clerk's office double this year? Okay? What we're hoping when we come to you with that question is you don't go, yeah, that's weird. Why would that be? Okay? Holy cow, that's a bad thing. You could be doing your analytics on an ongoing basis, okay? When we do our analytics, we're supposed to put these things in, but before we even do it, before we even look, we're supposed to say, what do we expect to see? Okay, so what do I expect to see in salaries and wages? I expect to see a 2% increase, a 3% increase. I know what the contracts are, so I know what to expect. If I see a 5%, a 7%, well, what's going on here? Why would that be? And I can stop right at that point and say, this is an area that I need to explore further as an auditor. As a CFO, if you're proactive and you're looking, you'll know before I get there. Even better, there may be a very good excuse for it as to why this is up. And we love it when we come and we say, well, yeah, why is the clerk? Oh, that's because the year before we had a part-time clerk and now we have a full-time clerk. There's an answer for it. And the idea that you would know that answer gives us that warm, fuzzy feeling that we're supposed to be getting, or just maybe because of last night they got the warm, fuzzy feeling, but maybe. Okay, but I'm serious that when we hear that back from you, you're actually paying attention to it. That tells us that the tone at the top is good. You're actually paying attention to what's going on. I tell a story about the former, it's still actually a client of ours, and basically they'd stolen money out of the fire department. Correction, they took everything. Every month, say about $12,000 to $15,000 would come in for the fire department. And it was in between audits, we weren't in there, and we find out that the woman was taking all this money. So I go into the CFO and I'm like, didn't you notice that there was nothing? And she goes, yeah, that was weird. Yeah, they hadn't turned over any money. I'm like, are you kidding me? So now, I mean, it really wouldn't have made much of a difference. They caught the person anyhow. But as the CFO, don't you think, if the court didn't come in this month, the court money didn't come in, okay, we can make a phone call, you can send an email, what's going on? But as auditors, we come in all the time, it's like, there's stuff missing. It's 10,000, 10,000, 10,000, 0, 10,000, 0. And you should know that before we even get there, okay, to do these analytics. And you need it anyhow for budget projections and things of that nature. Where are we going to be at the end of the year? Okay, it wouldn't be nice when your finance committee comes and asks you that question. But if you set up some simple analytics, whether it's in spreadsheets, and I know that Edmunds has some capabilities already built into it to be able to produce some analytics and comparisons between years, you would know. You know that the ABC licenses for the clerk are supposed to come in May or June. You know to look for that. So you set your expectations, you run your analytics, and I think that that's something that, and the internal audit function, which I think is bold, okay, it's if you have the people do it. The analytics, if you set it up properly, it really should just kind of populate itself and you can see it. You could put conditional formatting on it in Excel so it comes up in red if it's something that's beyond your expectations. And then you're doing that before we get there. Because a lot of times by the time the auditors get there, the damage is already done. And you're responding to it in real time. Go ahead. Oh, sorry.
One of the things that I do with the analytics, I do monthly things, and I'll look, and if I don't think that a revenue is performing as it should be, or if there's a budget account that seems, you know, crazy expended at this point in the year, I do everything through email, and I contact the department head and I point it out, but I always copy my administrator on that again, because I want them to be aware. If I get a response from a department head who says, oh, here's the reason for that, and you know, and it seems reasonable to me, but again, we're so spread out in Middletown, I can't know everything that's going on. So I like to have the administrator who should know everything that's going on in departments, as far as if there's some major change to a program, or there was some emergency that they had to spend more money they had planned, that he is on that, or he or she, depending on what your circumstances are, is on that, so that, yeah, they can verify that information as well. Because again, you could get an explanation back and then not find out until it's too late that that explanation wasn't really correct, and then you have a bigger problem again. So it's, you know, it's always good to have a team involved, and not everything needs a team, and not everything needs my administrator to say, yeah, that's right, but there have been times where I've done that, and he'll say, well, that doesn't make sense to me. Why didn't I know about this? And, you know, ask some questions. And that way we know, too, if we need to make some kind of correction. Is there going to be a problem with surplus at the end? Do I have to look for a budget transfer? And also for my next year's budgeting, you know, if it's a revenue, is this a trend? Is this an anomaly? How am I going to handle that going forward?
Okay, so we're going to pick up the pace a little bit, because I know ice cream is waiting, and all the guys are really riveted with this
20
stuff.
minutes.
20 minutes, okay. So you're in between the audit, okay, you're doing these things that we show up, you're all ready, and now it's time to brace yourself, because audit season is upon us. So now you're back to the beginning of the audit, okay, but now you're ready, because you're the proactive CFO, whatever that might be, right? And so we're encouraging you to adopt the auditor's mindset. Auditor must always approach the engagement with professional skepticism. We're not walking in and assuming that everything's wrong, but when you tell us something, we're supposed to say, okay, that's interesting. You said that, you know, that's the light. And I look, oh yeah, it looks like a light. It's probably a light, but I'm supposed to be skeptical about it. And you can use that same mindset with your own staff and your own. They give you something, you should look at it a little bit skeptically. It's a fine line, though. Okay, between being jerky about it, right, or being skeptical about it. And you just got to kind of maybe train your staff to not take it too hard, but say, okay, really, show me this, and ask for the backup, and ask for the details. Once again, after doing this for 35 years, I have the professional skepticism at home with my wife, and she doesn't appreciate it, I got to tell you right now. That's really dinner? Are you sure it's dinner? But it's a mindset that you do have and you keep up, and I think it actually is very good, and it's a very simple way to look at things maybe a little bit differently when they're brought to your attention. Adopting the mindset your day-to-day activities can assist in developing and strengthening internal controls. Correct. That's just thinking about it. That's part of like that ongoing you know, updating of your internal controls. Risk-based audit. Okay, the audit should never be boilerplate that fits one size. They changed this years ago. At one point, it was boilerplate. It was one size. And now they changed it, so we're supposed to go in and you know, kind of mold the audit to the circumstances that that particular client has. And it talks about at the beginning, we do a fraud conference when we get in there. The auditors huddle together. It's not actually a huddle, but we do actually sit in a room. And we talk about where we think that fraud could be occurring within the municipality. And it is a little bit boilerplate, because where could fraud be? We'll go to the cash. You know, tax office maybe, payroll, things. Those are always going to be areas that are going to be, you know, up for fraud. If you talk about the number of frauds that we've seen at the Supply Cleaning Company over the course of 70 years of doing this stuff, payroll, taxes, okay, always. The other stuff in the departments is usually smaller, it can occur, but those are two areas that we're always going to concentrate as auditors. There could be a change in personnel. Say the CFO is left, there's a new CFO in town. Okay, that changes things a little bit. For you guys as a CFO, if you have a new person at the court, you have a new person in one of your departments, you got to be thinking to yourself, well, wait a minute. They're probably wonderful people, but I have to take a little bit more scrutiny, a little bit more time with that. We hand out fraud questionnaires to you guys. Most of you people should get at least asked by your auditors, do you guys think there's any chance for fraud occurring out there? To me, that you send them back and they would say, no, there's no fraud whatsoever. I had one, I handed it out to the woman. I asked her, she goes, no, nothing's going on, fantastic. And then she takes the questionnaire from me. I don't get it back for like 2 weeks. I'm like, well, that's not good. And then she hands it back to me, and it turns out the prosecutor's office was in there, and somebody was stealing, they were buying light bars for the top of the police cars and selling them on eBay. But when I asked her the question, she wouldn't tell me. When I gave her the thing, then she told me. So try and be honest as you can. It would be very helpful to us, of course. But it is also your opportunity to help us to guide there. That's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be focusing the audit on the problem areas. So you could say, hey, listen, I think I've got a problem in payroll. Or I think the CFO doesn't know what she's doing, right? Just kidding. We were not supposed to be going on wild goose chases either, but you could have legitimate areas that you think that we should be focusing. And that's what we're supposed to be doing by doing this risk-based audit. And the fraud triangle, of course, one of my favorite things, talking about rationalization, opportunity. Actually, rationalization is about motive, right? Rationalization. Or
this is your thing.
This is motive, it's opportunity, and it's rationalization. Motive, I can't, that could be the listen, my wife lost her job, so I'm supposed to, steal this money. Or rationalization, well, they don't pay me enough money, so I should do this. But it's opportunity and perceived opportunity that we kind of look at as auditors, okay, that is key. And using the fraud triangle they'll probably soon make it into the fraud octagon for all I know. There's more and more categories every time I look at it. But perceived opportunity. If I use the example of payroll all the time, that if the ADP payroll comes in and it gets delivered to the payroll clerk, and I'm the CFO and I'm over here and the payroll clerk gets it, they distribute all the paychecks. Okay, the payroll clerk could be there. Actually, I'll be the payroll clerk because I'll be the bad person here. And she's the CFO, and I get the payroll stuff, and nobody's looking. I get the checks, I send them out, I'm like, well, wait a minute, nobody's looking. I could do whatever I'd like. Conversely, I can take away that perceived opportunity by being the CFO and saying, you know something, when that stuff comes in from ADP, don't send it to the payroll clerk, send it to me. Let it sit on my desk. I may not even have to look at it. But as long as the payroll clerk knows that I'm getting it and I might be looking at it, well, that's a problem. They no longer have this perceived opportunity. That, I think, is really one of the more critical things that you can do to shore up your internal controls. Anything on that?
Well, one of the things, since in this day and age we don't really get payroll deliveries anymore, so that...
You're calling me outdated?
A little bit. So that suggestion may not work, reviewing your internal controls on an ongoing basis.
Whether it's coming electronically or physically, you should be looking at it before it goes to the payroll.
So anyway, just say, for example, what I recently instituted in Middletown is I now have someone outside of the payroll department who, with each payroll, lays out for me by budget account what's being charged to that budget account. So that's one of our first steps. If suddenly there's a wild swing, then she takes that and she looks into it further. Why? And both up and down, because I want to know why is it going down? What is this fluctuation? And then she'll make little notes for me that tells me, someone's on workers' comp, they hired a new person here, this person retired, so that we understand why that's happening. And that at least initiates if we need to look further into something. Again, Middletown's a larger town, so we have the advantage as well that we have an HR department. So our payroll department does not put in new employees. That's outside of their realm as well. So there's a good internal control system there. Of course, when you're a smaller town, it's a little bit different, but it's also easier to look at the data, whether it's physical or electronic. In a smaller town, you can scan through, and if you know your 38 employees, you're going to know right away whether someone new is on there. So it's just, again, a process of reviewing what works for you. And payroll is, for me, payroll and benefits are my largest concerns as far as internal controls, because they're my largest expenses in a budget. And I need to make sure that when we're paying those, that we are doing all that we can to be sure that those are proper charges, that nobody's being overpaid, that we're not paying health claims for someone that doesn't even work for us. So it's, it's those kind of things. Again, that's up to you, though. What works for you? What do you need in your town?
So again, at the beginning of the audit, simplifying the process, consider file sharing with your auditors. Most people are probably doing that at this point. I mean, I have a Dropbox file for pretty much each one of my clients. They drop the files in there. It makes things easier. Consider giving your auditor access to your financial reporting software. Okay, we actually have admins on a lot of our computers, so I can actually run my own reports. Isn't that great? I come in and ask you for a report. You run it incorrectly because I've told you to run it incorrectly. Then I'm upset about it. And I have to come back again and keep poking at you. Instead, I have the software on my computer. I can run the reports myself.
And we hardly have to see them then.
Yeah, so that's really good. There we go. Settle down, Barrett. Once again,
I want to jump in. John skipped over something that I find really important when preparing for the audit. I like to sit down with my auditors in the beginning, and I like to let them know any areas of concern that I have. Because as a CFO, you can ask departments about things, you can put out processes, and you may still have people out there, believe it or not, who don't listen to you, and they don't think that what you're saying is really important. However, you can use your auditor as a tool, and they're good at that, and you can have them be the ones who go out and they ask those questions.
We're the bad guys is what it comes down to.
Right, but honestly, it's one of the most effective tools I've had. You know, I say, you know, this is something that I've been on and I just don't feel I'm getting the proper response. So then they go out and they help me. And then, again, kind of back to the exit conference, if we're still having an issue, it's something that they can then bring up in the exit conference. And if you have people there to help you with this, you usually can get these things resolved.
So the other thing, we're going to run out of time, so we have to keep moving here. That ice cream waiting for them, okay?
Okay, we have 15 minutes.
15 minutes, all right. So one of the other things you can do is get the samples ahead of time. We kind of like that too. In other words, you can send me a check register in Excel. I can do all my sorting, all this stuff, get my material items test, I can get my internal controls test, and I can send it to you and you can pull out the vouchers for me. Everybody wins. I don't have to pull the vouchers out. You don't have to complain that I didn't put them back correctly, because usually the auditors can't do that, right? But let's face it, you also get a chance to pre-audit your vouchers and look at them. Okay, I would never say that you would go out and get an invoice that was missing and call the vendor real quick and do it, but it is advantageous to you to do that. And it does save a lot of time for us as well. Ask your auditors, can I have the samples up front? Not 10 weeks in front, whatever. Although actually we do some where we do it during the course of the year. We do like intermittent auditing, or once halfway through the year in some of our larger clients. That helps as well. But you get those samples up front. I think that really kind of helps everybody. Be prepared. Be sure to consult various calendars before agreeing to an audit time frame. Ask about the number of on-site audit team members and reserve space for them. You know where you're going to put us, in the coldest, darkest room possible with the worst conditions. They once put me at like a half-moon desk next to a boiler in Roselle Library, and I worked there for a week, and they had a tough audit. They should have put me someplace nicer. But really, honestly, it is hard, and a lot of places have space considerations, okay? But being able to plan that out, or even saying in advance, like, listen, John, we can't have you here Tuesday and Thursday this week because we have something going on. We'll plan, we'll adapt, we'll overcome. But if you communicate to us, that makes it a lot better, as opposed to coming in 3 in the afternoon. By the way, you got to clean everything up and get out of here in the next 5 minutes because we have a meeting. So we really do appreciate that if you can work that out for us. And then actually during the audit, okay, again, have key people available. If we're going to commit to a time to do the audit, and I come in and say, oh yeah, the payroll clerk is out for the next 3 months, she's in Fiji. That's not good, okay? Certain folks we can kind of get around. The CFO has to be there. Payroll clerk, very important. What's that?
No, you don't.
Yeah, we need the CFO. But that is, we run into that more often than you might think. And everybody's going to have people on vacation each time. Okay, that we will work around. But if it's going to be a long-term deal, you kind of let us know that. We talk about the space. Keep an open lines of communication during the audit. Okay, getting back again to the exit conference. One of our mantras as Suppley Clooney Company is that we can't get to the exit conference and surprise you. Oh, by the way, there's $20,000 missing in the construction code. That's bad. Okay, during the course of the audit, we should be communicating with you. If there's something, I'm not going to tell you everything that's going on, but if there's something major, you guys should know about it. But at the same time, you should be sticking your head in every once in a while into with all the craziness and us typing what. How are things going? You'd be amazed. I have clients that just like almost sneak by me at the end of the night. They're like walking by. Like, hopefully they don't ask me a question.
I don't always do that.
Yeah. No, she's the opposite. But it is really important to walk in every once in a while to make sure that communication, what's going on? What do I need to know about? Because what that does, and Colleen had brought it up earlier, you hate to get to an exit conference and say, oh yeah, we've got this problem over here. And then it turns out there's other factors that we didn't know about. We didn't communicate well enough. We got the 3 C's, comments, communication, and conclusion on our work papers. And the communication is, I talked to John Barrett about it. John understands that when we get to the exit conference, it's just, okay, yes, we know about that. There should be no surprise, like, what, you didn't tell me about this. particularly if you're sitting there in front of the finance committee. Everybody should know, it shouldn't be a secret. It's more just a recap of what we've done already. So I find that to be probably one of the main things, that the communication during the course of the audit is not good. And it's on both sides. The auditor should do it as well, but you guys should stick your heads in every once in a while and say, hey, what's going on? What do we need? What do we have? Is there one more? And we're back to the exit conference. So again, you come back around to the exit conference, and now you've gone through it, you're the proactive auditor, you have all the answers really kind of before we get there. And that's really, I think, what Colleen and I were talking about when we started out with this, to kind of understand more what we're looking for and to be prepared for that. So you'll have the answers. And again, I can't emphasize how good it makes us feel as auditors that you guys are paying attention when we ask you these questions and you know the answers ahead of time. So we got at the end here, although this may seem to be an overwhelming task list, it does not apply to each organization, it does not need to be implemented 100%. Merely a guideline for becoming more proactive and less reactive when it comes to the annual audit. I don't know, what's the dog mean up there?
Well, he's kind of looking at us saying, really, you think I'm going to do all of this?
It's true, and everybody, like I said, very rarely do I walk in and find the CFO sleeping at their desks. Every once in a while. But, you know, you guys have a lot on your plates, but there's some things that are in the program that we went through today that I think are fairly simple to implement, which would be helpful for you.